Is your exercise and nutrition program serving you, or are you serving it? So today we're going to be talking to you about how to beat this obsessive need of constantly working out or staying super restrictive with your nutrition plan when it's not serving you. And we're joined today with Dr. Anthony Fortuna, who, fun fact, is frozen on the screen right now.
Yeah, I was going to say.
We're also joined with Rachyl Geringer, who's our registered dietitian and is the #1 intuitive eating expert in the world. So guys, how are we doing today as we wait for Anthony to jump back in here?
I'm feeling golden.
Ooh, I like that. There's a glow to that. That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good. Yeah.
I don't know if he's got his
Hey, what's up, Mac? Mac said, hey, you crazy kids. Well, I'm going to say my word. Oh, no. All right. I'm confident we're going to get him back. We're going to get him back. Yeah. Yes. How we doing today, Mac? Long time no talk. I just talked to Mac.
Oh. He missed you so much. He had to jump on live.
I'm back on. Yep. Groovy. Awesome. The cool thing with this software, Rachyl, is as you can see, you can actually see the comments coming in.
Yeah, I saw it. Mine's a little delayed. I see it now.
Pretty
Hearts.
Cool. So.
Feeling the love.
Yes. I'm gonna wait for Anthony to. Oh no, did we freeze? That's what he texted me. My man, there he is.
There I am. Oh, there I am. Oh my gosh.
Okay. We actually did the whole podcast without you, bro. Like we did the whole podcast without you.
Wow. Did you say your word already?
Yep. Everything. The whole thing. We're done. So thank you guys for watching. No, I'm just kidding.
Thank you.
But Anthony, so Rachyl said she's golden today. She's golden. That was her word. So
that was the word.
How are we doing today, Anthony?
Yes, I am.
No, I'm just kidding.
No, right. I'm done. No. I am steadfast.
Ooh, I like that. That is a hard word to find synonyms for, I would imagine.
Yes, so for some context, everybody, I was finding some synonyms for a fancy way to say persistent. So I am steadfast.
Ooh, I like that. I am supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
You won.
I told you, no one would, there's no way you could have said the same thing.
No,
yeah, not a chance.
Awesome. All right, guys. I'd love to get started in this way. Anthony, if you can kind of kick us off, because you inspired a little bit of what we're talking about, a lot of what we're talking about today, along with Rachyl. I would love to hear from you when you get into this. By the way, Anthony, you missed it. Mac was here earlier. He was saying, hey, you crazy kids. And then, we're talking about our words, and Mac goes, I am old. But Anthony, I'd love to kick us off here and start off in this way. How do we begin to battle that obsessive nature of I have to work out. This is my 3 days a week. I got to stick with this. Or with my nutrition plan, nope, I got to eat this. How do we begin to kind of navigate a little bit of that obsessiveness that we might feel when we're following a program?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And this inspired by, I feel not 100%. I've been battling kind of maybe a flu or sickness or some sort for the past couple of days. And I guess the best way to tackle it is to acknowledge it, acknowledge that you feel like crap, that you don't want to do anything. And a perfect example was just yesterday where I just felt that pull to, all right, I feel like crap, but I need to do this workout. I need to, do this fasted training. I need to lift weights. And I think the best way to navigate that is just to catch yourself. And so I love something that Rachyl said before we started was to listen to your body, right? You're tired for a reason. Your body's trying to communicate to you to slow down a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's one of the most challenging things we can do is really just slow down enough to listen to our body.
Mm.
Yeah, I think we've just been conditioned, it's you're tired, too bad. There's stuff to be done. Ignore it.
Right.
Just push off how you're feeling. It's normal. Everyone has to go through this crap, but you can't stop, So it's we've just been taught that, everything else comes before taking care of ourselves.
You know what's interesting too is I would love to hear from you guys what you think the distinction is between allowing your feelings to prevent you from doing something you know would benefit you versus actually listening to your body. Because I think this is the perfect example. Because right now, Rachyl, I hope you don't mind me sharing, you have volleyball after this, right? So you're like, it's raining. I don't really feel like going. And you and I both know like that would be a very good thing for you to go to. On the other hand, Anthony, you're recovering right now from some sort of a flu or cold.
Yeah.
And you want to go to the gym, yet it would actually be more beneficial for you to do something that is a form of active recovery, such as breathing or stretching or yoga or walking. So I'd love to hear from you guys. Like, obviously, there's a huge distinction there. How do we begin to, and Anthony, I'd love for you to answer this first. How do we distinguish between listening to our body versus allowing our feeling to get in the way of something we know is going to benefit us?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Rachyl and I's example is like a perfect like distinction.
Yeah. No, it is perfect.
Yeah, like if you get that feeling like,
I
okay,
couldn't have scripted it better myself.
I know, right? Seriously. I guess if we have that feeling, okay, I need to do something, I need to do X or Y or Z, I need to do this, then that's probably a sign like, okay, maybe like slow down a little bit. Versus, Rachyl, when you had that feeling, okay, well, I'll just stay home. I don't want to do this, rest in. Maybe that's the kind of like the push for you to go. So it's a very fine line, but I think those two things are very good distinctions.
I love that push and pull concept. Yeah, Rachyl, how about yourself? How would you kind of distinguish between these two seemingly similar things?
So I guess what I would see it as is it more of a physical thing or is it more of a mental thing? That's how I would distinguish it, because my body feels fine. Like, yeah, I feel tired, but that's probably because it's been raining all day. I haven't been out walking. I've been sitting in front of my computer for a little while, so my blood's not pumping. So there's like other reasons for why I could feel a little fatigued, but it's mostly mental for me. So whereas for Anthony, he feels it physically. And that's where I would draw the line between, our example. And I feel like that could be, a pretty good way to look at it for other examples too.
I love that. I took a chapter out of Anthony's book. I wrote something down that inspired me based on what you said. So it almost reminds me of like, there's something external, like the weather or versus something internal, like you're physically how your body is kind of communicating with you. And it sounds like how I would distinguish it is I would say, is this something external that is like the weather, or is this something internal that I'm kind of, my body's trying to let me tell me something? And based on that, I would say, okay, this is something I need to either push through or pull back on based on that response.
Yeah. I think another thing you could think about is, based on what you're thinking you're going to do. Like say I'm thinking to myself, I don't really want to go. I'm just going to stay home. What am I going to do at home that's going to benefit me and make me feel better than I do right now? Probably nothing. I'd probably end up continuing to sit down, put on a movie or something, but like, whereas if I go out, I go get a little exercise, socialize, those things are good for me right now. So that could be another thing, is thinking about the outcome of whichever choice you make.
Yeah. I mean, logically, right? Like being isolated and not moving is probably worse off than being socialized and moving. Yeah. 100%. And obviously with Christmas around the corner, literally on Sunday, and then Christmas Eve on Saturday, there tends to be, I believe, two schools of thought when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to the holidays. One is, you know what? I want to stay structured. I don't want to go off plan. So I'm going to do my best to maybe have a little bit, but really stick to my guns. And then the other school of thought is, F it, like, forget about it, so I'm just gonna I'm just gonna do my own thing, and I'll continue after the holidays. And I feel like there is a middle path that we can take that isn't either one of those two things. So I'd love to hear from you guys in the spirit of having your program serve you and not have you serve it. How can we begin to navigate our plan and have a little bit of flexibility as opposed to a black and white thinking when it comes to both our exercise and nutrition? And Anthony, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that's exactly like my experience. I think I'm falling on the spectrum of like, okay, Christmas is coming up. I don't want to fall behind. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna like I'm gonna see the scale skyrocket, like I want to keep up with my plan, and I think part of it is like kind of like acknowledging like it's gonna suck, of course. Like I think the main message is like it's okay. I think that old saying, right? You take a step back, take one step backwards, and you go forward 3 steps. I think it's just so important to acknowledge, okay, it's gonna suck, but this will serve me in the future. And I think on something that you always say, Urson, is this is a lifestyle, right? It's kind of like, it's a marathon, not a race. You want to make sure that you don't burn yourself out, right? To get to your finish line or your end goal.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And don't forget to enjoy life while you're on this journey. That's what, like, that's a lot of the reasons why people end up, going on diets and then going off, because like they look at it as, okay, this is temporary. I can do this for like, 3 to 6 months. I can isolate myself. I can avoid, sweets for 6 months, and then you get off of it. And then, then you can't regulate yourself as much. So yeah, that's a big problem with that all or nothing mindset, because then it just becomes seasonal.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Mac and I were talking about this earlier, actually today, about how this isn't something like the Fit Body program, as an example. This isn't something that you do for a period of time and you're like, okay, like I'm going to go back to doing what I would like. No, this is just how you live now. This is I would have a student, a member in the program ask, Urslan, what's the exit strategy? He would constantly ask this question. I'm like, Kevin, and he had like an incredible result. Kevin McLaughlin. I still can't say his last name, but anyway, what he would say is like I would tell him at the end of the program, I was like, Kevin, you've been in the exit strategy since day one, and he loved that because and it was something he was able to, like you said, Anthony, it's a lifestyle change, right? That like you learn, and if you have that black and white thinking, then it's not a lifestyle change. Then you're still in the dieting mentality. Right? Of like good days, bad days, good food, bad food. I suck. I rough. Like just like all these like black and white things. Whereas again, we're not here as human beings to serve a diet plan, right? Like that's ridiculous. Or a workout program. Like these things should be serving us in the season of life that we find ourselves in. And sometimes a milkshake, like Anthony knows, is very much appropriate, and it's going to serve you. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
you have to be able to have the enjoyment. Like food has been around for so long. Obviously, it's what we need to survive. But like culturally, like there's so many celebrations that involve food and flavors, like from different cultures. So like it is meant to be enjoyed too. It's not just to be looked at as something that's like to help us lose weight or to gain weight.
Yeah. 100%. And one thing I'd also love to chat about is the morality behind food. And stick with me as I kind of unravel what that means. So oftentimes we'll hear people say, oh, I'm being bad. Like I'm going to do this and that. And like objectively, eating food doesn't make you bad. That's ridiculous. But I mean, Anthony, and I'm sure Rachyl, you would agree, there's a lot of power in the way we speak over ourselves and the words we use, right? There's like almost this loop of the words you use, the actions you take, and the results you have, the thoughts you think. They all kind of work in tandem together. And I think it's really important for us to address the way we're speaking, because I feel like a lot of times we get stuck in obsessiveness and black and white thinking. And we get stuck in a plateau where we're serving our exercise or nutrition program because of the words we're using. So Rachyl, I'd love to hear from you first. How can we begin to shift away from these black and white thinking patterns through using better language patterns, if that makes sense?
So obviously we're going to get rid of the good and bad, the like polar opposite black and white thinking. And we're going to replace like those with, you know, it's literally nutrition. Any piece of food that you eat is just nutrition. Every food that you eat provides your body with some kind of nutrient. So your body can use it. So it shouldn't be looked at as good or bad. Your body's going to be able to use it up. So that's the way that you switch off that good or bad, because you just look at it as, okay, this is a carb and my brain needs it. My cells, all of my cells need it to perform duties. So switching from like, you know, just looking at a cookie as, oh my gosh, it's sugar. Like sugar is bad for you. No, it's nutrition. And point blank and simple. That's it. You have to stop looking at foods as good or bad, as like a category, and look at it just as nutrition.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't have said it any better. Just, I think it's so important not to look at things as black or white, but instead have kind of like this non-judgmental mindset. A concept that I, you know, as a therapist, I kind of go over with my clients is this concept of cognitive diffusion, right? Essentially, it's a big fancy way of saying we get caught up in these pulls and pushes and that inner tug of war that our mind kind of goes through. Okay, should I work out? Should I not? You know, this is bad. This is good. And instead, kind of like taking a step back and saying, okay, I'm observing all of these thoughts going on. You know, how can I live a life that is towards my values? You know, try not to kind of burn yourself out. So absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that concept of working towards your values and living in alignment with that. Yeah. By the way, so Dr. Dean Eitri says, Thomas Edison quoted that the doctor of the future will teach his patients the framework of nutrition to prevent disease and illness. I think that's brilliant. I heard that quote a while ago, but we're all essentially doctors of the future, with Anthony being the actual doctor.
Well,
so Anthony, I'd also love to hear from you. How can we begin to phrase our language patterns in a way that's going to serve us to make sure we're not getting trapped in the black and white thinking when it comes down to food?
Right, absolutely. And one simple way of doing this is, instead of saying, you know, I am bad, right, or I am good, simply kind of putting before that, I am having the thought that I am bad, or I am having the thought that I am good. And in that way, you kind of have a little bit of a distance, you know, between kind of your thoughts. So you don't kind of necessarily take it in as, you know, black or white. Having some distance and kind of like taking a step back.
I love that. Could you expand upon that? Like, just in regards to why that's important and what that provides for you, rather than identifying with the word I'm bad or I'm good. Like, what does that distance provide for you that otherwise wouldn't be there if you didn't create it?
Right, absolutely. Without that kind of distance or like kind of diffusing, you know, I guess all of us, right? We all get sucked in or kind of hooked with these shoulds and musts, right? That kind of black or white thinking. With that distance, you can be able to navigate kind of like your everyday life decisions. Actually, there's a perfect metaphor. I do this when I teach my classes. So like, I guess just impromptu. Ooh, just grab my notebook here. So I guess like, let's pretend like this is like you know, all your stressors, like this little book, you know, and this is like, okay, I must work out. I need to do this or that, right? When I get like so fused or so stuck with like, okay, like I should work out, I need to do this or that, right? It kind of like blocks us a little bit from like, you know, seeing the world or kind of navigating the world in the best way possible. I do this with my students. This is be a little bit silly. So Ursula, can you hold out a number like between 1 and 5 with any of your hands, if that makes sense? Are you doing it? Are you doing it,
Yes,
Rachyl?
yes.
Like, obviously, if I get like so sucked in with these thoughts, right, I'm not able to interact with Rachyl. I have no idea what number he's putting out.
Yeah.
But if I have some distance, kind of like this, like letting it be there, I can say, oh wow, Rachyl, you're holding up the number 2. Interact with you, right, and live out my life the best way possible, while it's still acknowledging the distress that's still there.
That's fun. I kind of want to do that. That's what number you're doing.
I kind of made up the whole number thing, but yeah, that's
awesome. I love that. So here's my question to you guys then, is obviously like it's powerful to separate ourselves in this way and have that flexibility as opposed to just having that rigidity. And then here's my question. How do we balance the fluidness with that and the structure that's required to make sure we're not just letting ourselves off the hook either? So Rachyl, I'd love to hear from you. How do we balance these two things where we're not all to one side fused and then we're not all to another side floating in the ocean and just being like, everything's hunky-dory? Like,
yeah. So there's a term called gentle nutrition, and that kind of describes how you manage your wants and your needs nutritionally. So for example, let's say the way that I go about food is I always go for what I want first. You know, what am I in the mood for? Because that's what's going to make me ultimately feel satisfied. You know, if I don't eat what I'm in the mood for, then I'm going to feel like, you know, I still could eat something, you know, because I didn't give myself what I really wanted. So I start there, and let's say what I really wanted was, okay, I'll give you an example. So tonight, Will and I were craving buffalo chicken dip. So obviously the real way to make buffalo chicken dip is like an insane amount of cheese, cream cheese, like, you know, full fat products. But in order to make it fit better with, you know, what I know I need protein wise and, you know, with the other nutrients, I was like, okay, so I can have a couple chips with my buffalo chicken dip that I made with Greek yogurt instead of cream cheese. And I added a little less cheese into it so that it was a little bit more balanced and not really high in fat. And then I added in a side of green beans because I know I need vegetables. And so that gave me fiber, fat, you know, dairy, like a couple things in one meal. Now I could have made it a little more healthy, but, you know, at least I got the three macronutrients, and I also added in, you know, fiber and more micronutrients from the green beans. So like, you give yourself what you want, but also think about what ways can I make this suit my wellness. So then, you know, adding in vegetables, like what's missing from what I'm craving.
That's brilliant. I love that.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
So like everything fits, you know?
Yeah.
So then you don't have to feel like I can't have this. You can have it, but add things in rather than taking away.
Wow. That is amazing.
I love it. I love
that. That is awesome. That's like, that's a golden nugget. Like people.
Yeah. And that also makes you feel better, right?
Yeah.
Like you're not taking things away from yourself. You don't feel like you're missing out on anything.
Yeah. It reminds me of that concept. You can only build on success, meaning you can't be like, oh, this isn't working. That's not working. And now I want to like build on everything that's not working. You can only build on what's working. So very much in the same way, it's the difference between having more of an abundance mindset versus having a scarcity mindset when it comes to nutrition, right? Just having a more positive relationship and association with food. Very powerful. Very powerful.
And that just speaks to, like, I guess the greater concept, I guess what I try to like impart to people I work with, that psychological flexibility, right? Like, you know, you can have the things that you want, right? All in moderation, right? How can we kind of flex instead of like, you know, adhere to kind of these systems of like rigidity and like, you know, isolate ourselves or turn away. That's awesome.
Yeah, you know what's I don't know why this reminded me, but it's a little relevant a little not, but in countries where certain drugs are legal, they find that people do them less versus where, like, as an example, like prohibition, when alcohol was banned, the drinking of alcohol was like increased insanely high versus when it wasn't banned. So again, Anthony, I want to pose you the same question. How do we have that flexibility that allows us to not fall victim or trapped into a restrictive mindset? How do we have that flexibility, but at the same time have enough structure so that we're still moving towards our goals in a meaningful way, and we're not just like, you know, what do I feel like eating today, and just like go off the rails completely, in your opinion?
Right, absolutely. And I think the number one thing I'm thinking of is like ask for help. Like, you know, it's especially every member in the Fit Body program, like, you know, you have us as a resource, right? Okay, I'm struggling with this, I'm struggling with that, right? And also kind of going back to the basics, you know, what I'm thinking of, especially when I kind of feel better, just like going back to the basics of logging in my food, right? Getting my exercise done, you know, the fasted training and the weightlifting, just kind of like going back to the basics, you know. And also I think part of it, I think the answer to your question, I think before or something about like, okay, how do you like, you know the difference between like, okay, giving yourself a break versus like, are you letting yourself off the hook? And I think part of this is, you know, something I've learned the hard way is, I guess, we have to make room for some uncertainty, right? We have to make space for these negative feelings because they're them in itself, it's not a bad thing, you know, like, I'm not going to work out today. It feels horrible. It's with pure agony, right? But I also need it to kind of rest and kind of like, how do I sit with that? You know, I think that's kind of like, you know, easier said than done, right? But like at the end of the day, like I think that's the most critical thing.
Yeah. And I'd love to expand upon that. How do we begin to navigate some of these? Because I feel like a lot of the times it does come down to the way we're feeling, like moment to moment. Oftentimes, even when someone is stressed and stress eating, one of the reasons I would imagine why is not only to soothe the stress, but to fundamentally change the way we're feeling. Right? So, Anthony, to expand upon that, how do we sit with those feelings and allow them to kind of process and unfold in their own way without necessarily wanting to change how we feel, if that makes sense? Or is that not the right approach? Should we be looking to change how we feel?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I guess like there's like different, like, I guess, for example, different psychologists might tell you different things. Just I might get.
You're the number one psychologist in the world.
So we only care about what you have to say.
So I would say that, yeah, you shouldn't change the way that you feel. It's okay to, you know, have these feelings and, you know, essentially kind of embrace them, right? And I think the best way to answer this is, you know, to kind of engage in some mindfulness, right? And the simplest way, it doesn't have to be like a formal meditation session, but just, you know, be a objective, non-judgmental observer of your own experiences, trying to catch yourself in the best way possible. Okay, like I'm having the thought now of, okay, I want to eat like 2 pints of ice cream because I'm feeling horrible, right? And the more that you catch yourself, right, you kind of maybe like, okay, I'm catching myself. I want to eat the ice cream. Okay, what can I do differently, right? What can I do that is going to help me move towards my values? And maybe perhaps finding a substitute. Maybe is there something else that can help you feel good? Maybe it's watching a movie or talking to a friend, right? Kind of like trying to essentially cut in the cycle, right? Do something different.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, I think that's so powerful. Like, oftentimes I've heard that when we're dealing with things where we're not liking the way we're we're not liking the way we're feeling, and we want to change that, and we resort to things that are maladaptive, maybe overeating or whatever the case may be. Oftentimes that comes from a lack of feeling connection. That comes from feeling isolated. So reaching out is amazing, breaking those old patterns. Rachyl, I want to pass it along to you now. How do we then begin to break some of these old patterns that are no longer serving us, where in the past we're just a black and white thinker, like we're all or nothing kind of person? How do we begin to break some of these patterns and introduce a little bit of that flexibility, Anthony, was talking about and that you were talking about?
Mm-hmm. So I'm from what I've learned from myself and, from my therapist and books is that like the best way to head in a different direction is just by doing. So first of all, becoming aware of the repeating patterns that we want to avoid that aren't working for us and acknowledging that they're not working for us. And then thinking of like, what's the first step that's going to be most beneficial for me to take? Not thinking like, you don't have to think about everything that you have to do because that's just going to make your mind freak out and not want to do anything. So just thinking of the number one thing that is doable and, going to help you move a step towards your goal. So let's say the goal is to stop thinking that I need to not go off my plan at all for Christmas. Allowing that exposure, like taking action and allowing yourself, I think I talked about this before, but like thinking of what's the thing that you're number one most afraid to like do or have. Like maybe it's mashed potatoes. I don't know. Because it's, a high carb food. People are terrified of potatoes. Like, so like allowing yourself exposure to it and being purposeful, like, I guess, proactive about it. Yeah. So being aware that, okay, I'm scared to eat mashed potatoes or I'm scared to eat pasta, but let me put it in an amount like into my meal plan that is, perfectly fine, that fits. So then you just allow yourself to be exposed to it. And you take the power away from it by allowing yourself to eat the food.
Absolutely.
I love that. Yeah. I'm a big believer in that concept. Ralph Waldo Emerson would say, you need to do the thing to have the power, so yeah. when you're afraid and you are fearful of doing something, it's not until you do the thing that you are able to conquer that fear. And more often than not, I believe all of us know here that is the usual direction we need to head down, is those uncomfortable conversations we're not having, is the fears that we're not facing. Those are usually the paths that we need to walk down in order to go where we know deep down inside we want to go. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And always making sure that, like, if you're not comfortable doing it by yourself, or you feel like you need some guidance in how to tackle something that you want to, achieve, reaching out to someone who can hold you accountable and just like maybe help you work on steps to get there.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's so powerful. Like, this is why I believe in coaching so much, is because I believe we all have blind spots. And oftentimes those patterns that are not serving us any longer, oftentimes, like you were saying, Rachyl, that awareness is not even there sometimes. So when you have someone on the outside looking in and they're realizing like, oh, this is what's kind of tripping you up and this is why you're kind of stuck, that's helpful. And now you have, this is what you need to now do in order to move in a different direction and get to where you want to be, break through not only the plateau, but then also uncover that blind spot as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
How many times do you hear of like, people on podcasts, like I listen to health coaching or life coaching podcasts, and like these life coaches have life coaches because, we get distracted too. Yeah. Like, we're not perfect. We need help.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've had a mentor I've worked with for like a long time. And yeah, I've had a fitness, physique competitor, coach I've had 100%. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. We practice what we preach, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. I used to tell people, people ask, oh, you're a therapist. You have your own therapist. I was, yeah, of course. My therapist probably has their own therapist, and just like, it goes down a line.
That's awesome.
Yeah, just because we know it doesn't mean we slip up. Everyone's human. We're all human. We all make mistakes.
Absolutely.
And I think I want to point this out. Like, I think it's important to be kind of compassionate to yourself. I'm just noticing how the way we're talking about like being obsessive or not feeling so well, taking a rest day, like, it's we're not like talking about it in a way it's like, oh my gosh, I'm a terrible person, I'm weak, I can't do it, right? I'm just I'm not strong enough. We're saying, okay, it's okay. Like, yeah, it happens. We're human. We make mistakes. And even talking about it in that way can kind of feel less distressing a lot of ways. Like, oh, wow. Okay. It's okay to feel this way.
You know what I would like to pivot to is comparison. I feel like a lot of times the reason why we're getting obsessive and we feel like we need to do so much is because we see someone, like as an example, someone we aspire to, maybe even The Rock, right? As an example, I love The Rock. Dwayne Johnson, I think he's the greatest. Like, the guy works out 6 days a week, wakes up at 3 a.m, sleeps 4 or 5 hours a night, right? And sometimes we look at someone like that and we don't realize what goes into being able to do that. And we feel like we need to do that in order to get to the level they're at. So, Anthony, I'd love to circle back to you. How do we begin to handle a little bit of the comparison syndrome we might be dealing, or Rachyl, I'm not sure if Rachyl, if you deal with this at all, but how do we begin, Anthony, to handle some of this comparison syndrome that we might be facing with, especially with social media, where it seems like everyone's a world champion. It seems like everyone is more financially in better shape, physically in better shape, spiritually. They're everyone's Buddha. How do we begin to navigate?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, absolutely. So I'll give out two movie references. One I think you'll love, Ursula, but one maybe it's kind of out there. So I've seen this movie since I was a kid. It's called Head of State by Chris Rock. Have you guys seen that movie? He like runs for president, right? Okay, I figured. But one of it's like I don't know, it's like an older movie and wasn't that really good. But one of the lines that kind of stuck out to me is I think the Chris Rock's kind of love interest in the movie kind of said to him, run your own race. Right, kind of essentially using that metaphor, especially when you're kind of comparing yourself to other people, you're running your own race, right? Like people might be, far ahead in their own race, but you're kind of running your own, right? Kind of like, using that as kind of like a way to not be so hard on yourself. Now, the second movie reference I think you'll enjoy, Ruslan, is yesterday, as I was sick, I saw the movie Encanto. I believe that you watched. Right?
I'm a big Disney nerd.
Yeah, right. I do it. Is that right? I do it. And there's a line in the movie that stood out to me is remember, like you have nothing to prove, and kind of remembering that you yourself as the person that you're good enough. Right, that can be so hard, right? Like easier said than done. But just remembering that, it's okay to be where you're at right now in this moment, right? And just kind of like continue to be kind to yourself. Don't compare yourself to others.
I love that. I've heard to a similar vein that happiness is accepting the state of being that you're in and being fully at peace with where you are and who you are. So I love that concept very much.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I'll say something about The Rock. I think I might not be right, but I did remember reading something about The Rock where I think he doesn't use the bathroom when he works out. I think he has like a container where he uses the bathroom, he pees. So like, even then, right? Like it's a little bit like, right? You're so focused on your workout. I'm sorry, I love you, The Rock, if ever sees this, but even that, right? You can go overboard, right?
No, I mean, I feel like at some level, these world-class athletes, they are definitely on the extremes, and oftentimes, I feel like that's maybe what's required. Obviously, the members in the Fit Body program who we're speaking to are not looking to become world-class bodybuilders by any stretch, but we could definitely, learn from them for sure. But yeah, no, totally. That's definitely an extreme I wasn't even aware of. But Rachyl, no, I'd love to hear from you next. Yeah.
So I would say, like, we were all made to be different. If we were all made to be the same, we would all look the same. We would all sound the same. Like, so first of all, acknowledge that we're supposed to be different. Second of all, acknowledge that how boring would life be if we all were exactly the same? If we all had the same body, if we all had the same personality, if we all had the same job, how boring would that be? So we're all like, we're supposed to be different. So embrace that fact that, like the way that you are is the way that you're supposed to be. So kind of focusing on like your values, like, you know, I'm great because I blah, blah, blah. Like focus on what makes you original and how much like people appreciate that and how much you should appreciate that.
Absolutely. Nature loves variety, right? You'll never see like a straight line in nature. Like nature will like always, even like when you grow fruit, like if you ever been to a country where they grow fruit and it's not like chemically raised, you'll see it's like all different shapes, colors, sizes. It's awesome. And that's the beauty of it, is in the contrast and the differences in it.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. And to that point, my mentor shared with me something I found very helpful. He said, if you compare yourself with others, it usually happens for a couple of reasons. One is you're not too clear on who you are. And two is you're not clear on what you're here to uniquely create. So when we get clear on who we are and what we're here to uniquely create, then there is no reason for us to compare ourselves to anybody else, because we know where we're going and what we're creating uniquely, leaving our own footprint, if you will. Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree. And, you know, I think one of the most important things is I think it's a journey, you know, like Ursan, that when you talk about like comparison, like you just flashed me back to like 5 years of grad school, like that, you know, that I went through, and like, oh my God, I compare myself all the time, you know, to my fellow classmates who were amazing, right? Like doing all these amazing things. And like, I guess it took a lot of time to kind of create some distance, you know, with that. And like, you know, the place where I'm at in my own life, I'm like, wow, like, you know, I did pretty good. You know, I guess just a long way of saying it takes time, you know, and just don't beat yourself up.
Yeah, I feel like also it's human beings, and Anthony, you can let me know if you can fact check me here, but I know human beings, like from what I've heard, we were evolved to maybe have relationships with 150 people, right? And now we have essentially like we have access to the entire 8 billion people now on the planet, right? So it's like also like it's normal. I believe, in Anthony, you can let me know if I'm wrong. Absolutely. I believe it's normal for us to compare, but like when we used to compare back in the day, it's very different for like how we compare now. Like comparison is like a survival advantage tool, you know what I mean? But now it's like it doesn't serve us anymore as it once did.
Absolutely. You make such a great point, right, Ursan? Right. When we were biologically engineered, right, to compare ourselves, you were just alluding to, you know, we were cavemen to survive, right? We had to compare ourselves to other people. Like, okay, I have 2 fish. Ursan has 5 fish. Oh my God, I'm gonna die because I don't have enough fish. You know, I need to get enough. You know, right? Like you said, now fast forward to now, we're like, that's not necessarily the problems that we have, you know?
Yeah, and I feel like we get stuck in living in the gap of what's missing. And again, like I was saying earlier, you can only build on success. And a lot of us, and I know I sometimes even I've gotten trapped into this where it's like, what's wrong, what's missing, what's not there. We get stuck in the gap versus the gain, right? So I've read that if you do compare, and it's natural for us to do so, the best thing to do is compare from your past and how far you've come from where you are, to measure backwards essentially, and live in the gain and build upon the gratitude. Because if you focus on what you lack, you lose what you have. But if you focus on what you have, you gain what you lack.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
I think it's also like it made me think like back to when I was like trying to get super fit and super lean, and you know, you're following all these people who are so successful, and like I think you just tie yourself to them because you're like, oh my gosh, I want to be just like them. But all you're seeing is what they're posting.
Right.
You don't know that they're crying every night because they're not really happy with where they are. You don't know that, you know, they're not in a bad relationship. You don't know that, you know, so it's kind of a, you know, thinking that the grass is always greener somewhere else, when, you know, what you have going on now is what you should be nurturing just to get better and better. rather than trying to push for someone else's life that you don't even know what's going on.
Absolutely.
I mean, how many times do we hear about someone that in society's eyes has it all, and then, you know, tragically, like something horrible happens, right?
Yeah.
Where they maybe elect to take their own life. And so that's a perfect example of what you were saying, where the grass is not always greener on the other side. More often than not, it's where, like you said, where you're nurturing it. The grass is greener where you're watering it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, I know a very silly example, but I shared the rock peas in his water bottle. Who knows the other issues that led that.
Right.
Where did you read this? That's ridiculous.
I said the article. You should post this on Facebook. This, if anything, if this is a key takeaway point, that's what you.
Yeah, that's the takeaway from today. The rock peas in his water bottle while working out.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
But no, all of that to say that everything that we're doing here with the workout program, with the nutrition plan, it's here to serve you. You are not here to serve it. And even our mindsets, right? You know, there are some mindsets and beliefs that might serve you in a season of your life. And that's the beauty, I think, we have the gift of as human beings. We don't ever have to be the same, ever. No matter, like, we can change. We have this ability to adapt and to evolve and to grow and expand. And in one season of your life, a certain mindset and belief could serve you, whereas in a different season, it can, you know, kill you, right? So, like, what got you here is not going to get you there. And what got you there won't get you to where you want to be. So really, I want to encourage everyone listening today to make sure that whatever program you're on with your workouts, nutrition, even mindset, making sure that it's serving you in the season of life you're finding yourself in now, in the moments, in the holidays, versus you serving it. Yeah. But then I'd love to leave everyone off with some holiday wishes and some words of wisdom. Rachyl, if you can kick us off with some last second thoughts you want to leave off everyone with here today.
So, I mean, people keep messaging me, well, my clients, like, you know, I'm worried. What should I be doing for the holidays? And really, I just want everyone to, realize that this is a time for, you know, appreciating, like, you know, the people that you have around you, where you are in life, and the fact that we're all alive, you know, and pretty well. So make sure to remember that for number one, when you're like hugging your family members, just like embrace the moments and don't get caught up in the, I should be doing this, I shouldn't be doing that mindset. I want you to get caught up in the affection and love of the people around you, and recognizing that it's okay to enjoy food. It shouldn't be a guilt. It's, you know, food is there for pleasure also. But also just remember the gentle nutrition practices, you know, be mindful, make your meals well-rounded, eat what you like, you know, don't force yourself to eat foods you don't like just because Aunt May made it. Like, if you don't like it, don't eat it. But listen to your body, be present, and respect your health.
I love that.
Yeah, I love that.
Anthony, I'd love to hear from you. Last second thoughts you'd like to leave people off with here today.
Yeah, I love that. I guess at the end of the day, just be kind to yourselves, be compassionate, and similar to what Rachyl was saying, enjoy the holiday, right? The holidays are here for a reason, you know?
Yeah. They already come and go so quick.
Really, yeah. And,
yeah, right? It does feel like that.
Really, yeah. And, you know, I guess having that, I guess what I'm taking away from this conversation with you guys so selfishly, I guess have the faith that, like, you'll bounce back, like have the faith in yourself. I guess embrace the uncertainty, right? So it's like if you have a couple of, you know, setbacks, you know, just wait for the comeback, you know, that you're gonna be all right.
Yeah.
I love that. You know what it reminds me of, Anthony, is that no matter where you are, who you are right now, your best life is ahead of you. It's not behind you. Yeah. Yeah. And no matter what you've done in the past, you can do better. That's kind of what it reminds me of. Yeah. And I guess what I'll leave everyone off with here today is what I said earlier, which is really being present, but then also understanding that, you know, where focus goes, energy flows. And a lot of how we're feeling moment to moment is determined by the thoughts that we're dwelling on whether we're conscious of them or not, by the way we're moving our bodies and the language that we're using, and all of these things work in tandem. So in each one of these areas, I want to encourage everyone to really, focus on what you have, because if you do that, you're going to gain what you lack.
So,
yeah.
Too many good sayings.
It is. It's one of my favorite things I've ever heard. So guys, I hope this was inspiring. This was helpful for you. And if you found this valuable, there are a couple of ways that you can help. One is you can like or heart this video. And two is you can share this with just one other person that you believe would also find some value from it. So we want to wish you the happiest of holidays. Very Merry Christmas.
Yes. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Happy Hanukkah, happy holidays.
Yeah.
Kwanzaa, whichever, everything.
Kwanzaa, right? So we hope you'll all have a wonderful time with your family, and we will see you in our next video.